Hey, it's Adam, and in this video, I'm super excited to talk about how to acquire wisdom. We're going to talk about what wisdom is, and I'm going to share with you some of the most important techniques and strategies that I've gathered from my last 4 years of seriously studying different sages and masters and what they have to say about wisdom and how to be a wise person. This is by far one of my favorite topics to study because ever since I was a kid, I've been really in love with this idea of being a wizard. I've always wanted to be a wizard. Whenever I would watch Harry Potter or whenever I would watch The Lord of the Rings, I would always be so in love with the wise sage character like Gandalf or like Dumbledore, or if you watch Star Wars, like Yoda. This is a common archetype in all of our most popular stories. And this character of the wizard, they always have the most wisdom. And they also have so much power and so much respect. It feels almost like if you were to ask them a question about your life, they would be able to put you on the right track in 2 sentences. They would say some clever, witty thing that is also super duper deep and profound, and that would completely change your life. Now, in my life, I want to become wise. I want to be like Gandalf. And this is a possibility. There are people in the world, the sages like the Buddha or like Jesus Christ or like Lao Tzu. There are many sages that we would consider to be wise people. So wise that their words are still spoken about and meditated upon 2,000 years after they have lived. Now, wisdom is such a rare quality, and you don't necessarily have to be old and have a beard in order to be a wise person. What does it really take to be a wise person? Well, wisdom is having a deep understanding of life and what life is about. And this understanding comes from experience, and we're going to get into in a lot more detail exactly how to acquire wisdom. But wisdom in general is about having a very deep understanding of life. And the reason why having wisdom is so useful and so important for you in your personal life is that wisdom is relevant in all situations. Because wisdom has to do with how you relate to being, how you relate to the present moment. And if you haven't noticed, it's always the present moment. So any situation you find yourself in, it will be the present moment, I promise. And if you have wisdom and you have developed your relationship to the present moment, then you're gonna be in a much better position in your life to make the right decisions, to do the wise thing, to take the right action. And also, wisdom just gives you a very deep sense of awe and gratitude for this present moment. The most wise sages live their life in a state of constant awe and constant bliss, because having this deep understanding of the world is very fulfilling and it feels awesome. And that's really what you want in your life, is to feel awesome. And one of the only ways to actually get to that place is to acquire wisdom. So How does one acquire wisdom? I got 4 steps, 4 super important steps. And the first step for acquiring wisdom is not knowing. The first step for being wise is to be stupid. You have to admit to yourself that you don't know basically anything. Now, in order to really drive this point home, there's an amazing story. I'd like to tell you about the story of Socrates. Now, Socrates, he was this old philosopher, Greek dude who lived 2,000 years ago, and he went to go see the Oracle of Delphi. And the Oracle was basically, everyone trusted the Oracle. The Oracle told the truth, basically. And when Socrates went to go see the Oracle told him that no man is wiser than Socrates. And Socrates heard the Oracle and say, "What? That can't be true. There's no way. There has to be someone out there that's wiser than me, because I'm just Socrates. I don't know anything. I'm just some random dude. Why would I be the wisest guy? There's got to be someone out there that's much more wise than I am." So Socrates, what he did was he journeyed far and wide, traveling the lands, and on his journeys, he ran into some of the most wisest individuals, people who claim to be wise, people who claim to have the answers about what reality is and how to achieve happiness in life. So what Socrates would do is he would go and he would ask them about their knowledge. But he wanted to make sure that the person he was talking to, the person who claimed to be wise, he wanted to make sure that they were actually wise. So what he would do is whenever they would say something like, in order to be happy in life, you have to be virtuous and to love God, for example. Socrates, he would ask questions about this. He would say, well, what does it mean to be virtuous? What is virtue? Or he would ask them, what is God? Or what is love? And this is what we call today the Socratic method, is asking questions about something. Not because we want to debunk them and we want to make the other person seem stupid, but because we actually are curious about discovering what is true. So when Socrates would ask them all of these fundamental questions, if the person can't answer what virtue is, then basically it means that they don't know what they're talking about. And Socrates discovered that a lot of these people who claim to have wisdom actually had no wisdom at all. And really, they didn't know what they were talking about. Their logic fell right through with just some basic questions. So after he journeyed far and wide, he realized that, okay, I guess the oracle was right. I guess I am the wisest man, because at least I have the ability to admit that I do not know what is true. And this is a key quality that all of the most wise individuals have. They are intellectually humble. They have the ability to admit that they don't know what's true. And this leads me to talk about this beautiful quote, this British proverb that says, "The wise seek wisdom. A fool has already found it." And this means if you want to be a fool, then you think you already have the truth. You think you already have wisdom. You think you already know what life is all about. You think you already know what is true. But the wise man, the wise person, admits that he has no idea what is true. He has no clue what's going on in life. And from this state of not knowing, then you can actually start to go out and search for what is true. Then you can acquire wisdom. Why would I spend 4 years reading tons of books about how to be wise or what reality is all about? The reason why is because I admit I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know anything about life. I don't know the most basic things. I don't even know what reality is. I don't even know what this thing here that I call a body, what is this? This is, what the hell is going on? I have no idea. I need some help. I'm completely, I have no knowledge or wisdom at all. And that puts me in the position to go and actually find out what is true for myself. So that's key. If for more about not knowing, there's this beautiful book. It's called The Book of Not Knowing. Now, I actually haven't finished reading the entire thing, but this is one of the most powerful books that basically helps you question your own experience, which is the next step for acquiring wisdom, is that we have to question our culturally absorbed narratives. So realize that everything you think to be true about life is something that you've absorbed from an external source. Someone has told you how life works. So we trust our parents, we trust our teachers, we trust scientists, we trust the news, we trust the media, and using all of these external sources, we build ourselves a worldview, a story, a narrative that has a lot of the answers to some of the most basic questions. So if I were to ask you, what do you exist as existentially? What are you? What do you exist as? You would have this story like, oh, I'm a human being. And then I would ask, okay, well, what does it mean to be a human being? Well, okay, well, a human being is, I guess, a biological entity, an animal, where my body is made up of cells, and then those cells are made up of atoms, and the atoms exist in some physical three-dimensional space, and I live on the planet Earth, in this country called Canada, in the solar system. So you have an entire story. It's a narrative which gives context to your present experience. Now, the most wise people aren't very attached to this narrative because first they admit that they don't know what the hell is going on. And then they're able to actually question some of the most core assumptions that are made by their culture and that they've absorbed from their culture. So you have to realize that when you're born into the world, when you're a baby, you're born into the world and you don't know anything. You don't even know one thing. You don't even know your left hand from your right hand. You don't even know hands. You don't even know you. You don't know anything. So a wise person is able to recognize that that state of not knowing is what is most true about reality. Because not knowing is fundamental. You can't get any more fundamental than not knowing. Now, this is extremely, extremely key, and there's a lot more detail in this book, The Book of Not Knowing. When we study epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, how we know things, the study of proof, the study of science, or not science, but the study of proofs, how are things known, epistemology, extremely important for understanding anything and for acquiring wisdom. You can't understand the world unless you know how understanding works. So some important questions you can ask yourself is, was I even born? Notice how that was something that was told to you. Will I die? What is death? How does death even work? Is there such thing as non-existence? Do I exist right now? What is I? What is the self? What is the present moment? What actually is this thing we call the present? So you have this whole story of like what it is, but like what is it in your experience? What is it actually made of? How do we know? Can I trust science? Can I trust my own thoughts? What is the cause of existence? Why is there stuff? Why? What is time? What is the past? What is the future? These things, I've never experienced them before, so why do I think that they exist? What is space? What is distance? How does that thing even work? Because everywhere I go is always just right here. So how do I move in space? These are some very important questions, but let's move into the next point for how we can actually go about answering these questions. And this is why mindfulness meditation is so important, because step 3 to acquiring wisdom is you have to be able to separate your bare experience from what you think about it. So you have to be able to separate the appearance of the present moment, and you have to be able to separate between the appearance and what you think about the appearance, the judgment of the appearance. So a very simple example, which will be a lot easier and will be more natural to you when you become more practiced with mindfulness meditation. But a very simple example is if you actually take out your hand and you look at your hand, you will see that there is an appearance of your hand. The way that your hand is appearing in the present moment, the way it looks, the way it feels, that is the appearance. That appearance is true. That appearance can't be disputed. That is the case. The way it is appearing now is the case. So that's true. But then you have another layer, which is all the thoughts, all the stories you have about your hand. Even the idea that this is your hand and that I am a subject that is observing an object, which is my hand, that whole thing is context, and that's a narrative. That's a story. And that story can be disputed. Because already, so we have no proof of the self. There's no way to prove. How does proof even work? We can't prove that this is my hand. So even by calling it my hand, that's a story you've put and you've attached to this bare experience. And notice that if you're a very rational person or you love science, notice that science doesn't prove that this is your hand. There's nothing to do with that. Science can go and see what this hand is made of. Maybe it can see some cells, or it can see some atoms, or it can talk to you about the function of your hand. It can talk about how this hand connects to the nerves and the brain and the body, but it can never prove that this is your hand or that this is a hand. Now, this is extremely key. Science can't prove the difference between this book and this book. These are what we would call self-evident. But when you observe reality, when you observe your experience without thoughts, and you're able to be very mindful of how your experience is actually occurring now, you start to see that the difference between this book and this book is totally in my mind. I totally invented that. The separation between objects, that is mind stuff. That's completely invented. There is no true objective separation between objects because there's air in between these two books. Where does this book begin and this one end? It's not as obvious as you think if you get rid of all of your thoughts of the fact that this is even a book. So that's a very deep point. But in order to acquire wisdom, you have to be able to separate what you think about reality and what is actually appearing in your experience. Because those are two very completely different things. Now, the last way to acquire wisdom, step 4, is now that we've done all this very deep existential questioning, now we are open to exploring alternative perspectives, and we're open to exploring other paradigms. So a paradigm is like a bubble of reality that you live your entire life in. So if you live in a certain country, let's say I live in Canada, so I live in Canada, and I live in this bubble of Canada, basically. But then when I go and travel to Thailand, that is a new paradigm. To live in Thailand, the people in Thailand live in a different world. It's like a different bubble of reality. And since we don't know anything, we don't know which bubble is the right bubble, or which paradigm is the most accurate paradigm. So now we have to study some very paradigm stretching books. So for example, this book, Conversations with God, is probably my favorite book of all time. And I've already recommended it in my video, 7 Essential Books for Self-Mastery. This book is absolutely, completely mind-shattering. This book, every single paragraph is totally paradigm ripping. It's insane. If you consider yourself to be a very scientific, a very rational person, the point of this book is that a man, the author, has a literal conversation with actual God, and then God gives him all the answers to all of life. But notice how if you're already married to the idea of God doesn't exist, and you already know 100% that God doesn't exist, or you already know 100% that the world is physical, then you wouldn't even be open-minded to the possibility that this book has good information in it. And the truth is that this book has some of the best information I've ever read in my entire life, but it's so sad because 90% of people aren't even open to reading something this profound. It's not religious. It's not religious God. In fact, this book completely shits on all of religion. So if you're not a fan of religion, then you'll love this book. And it even goes so far as to question science as well. So the reason why exploring different perspectives is so important is because it gives your mind a lot of flexibility and ability to jump between different perspectives. And that's absolutely key for being a wise person. Because going back to the point of not knowing, if you already think that you know what is true and you already have a certain model of the world and you are married to that model and you know for sure that it's true, and you're listening to me talk and you're like, but Adam, we already know that the world is made of atoms and science is basically the arbiter of truth, and science is gonna get all the answers for us. You're telling me that I can understand all of reality, but science has already proved that there is no God. So this book, I'm not even gonna read it. This must be a waste of time. This entire 200 pages must just be complete bullshit. But when you think like that, you close yourself off, and you're only able to study a small little narrow field of information. But a wise person like Gandalf, they understand all of life. And the way that they do that is, first of all, admitting when they don't know something. And second of all, having the ability to study a wide variety of sources and put them all together. So when you're reading this book, for example, you don't have to believe blindly everything that is said in the book, but you at least have to be open-minded to temporarily believing it. You have to temporarily be able to put yourself in that worldview, in that paradigm, and then you might even have to live maybe a month with completely believing this book on blind faith. Just live for a month with the ideas in this book in your mind and see how it works for you. And if it doesn't work, that's cool, but still keep in your mind, and then we're gonna, go study some more perspectives. So this is so important because these new perspectives open us up to new ways of thinking, and that's how we acquire wisdom. Now, I've been rambling for a while. Now let's leave you with some 5 essential practices for becoming wise. Number 1 is mindfulness meditation. I already talked about this. If you want to learn how to do mindfulness meditation, check out my video, How Meditation Works. There's a lot of good resources there, even in the description of that video, for teaching you how to meditate. Number 2 is contemplation with a journal. So what you can do is you can literally grab a journal and you can write a question at the top, like, what is science? Or like, what is reality? Or maybe that one's too big. Or what is wisdom? So before I made this video, I actually contemplated for a good 30 minutes. What is wisdom? And then your mind is going to come up with a lot of answers, and then you just write them down, and you basically gain a lot of insight just from this process of questioning reality. Number 3, essential practice, is absorbing paradigm stretching material. So reading paradigm stretching books or listening to videos and ideas that would normally be out of your comfort zone. Number 4 is to learn about philosophy, specifically metaphysics and epistemology. Learn about psychology. So if you understand how your mind works, then it'll be a lot easier to understand how the whole world works, because, spoiler alert, it's all in your mind. This is true for you in your direct experience. This is not an idea. Look and see. Is there something that occurs outside of your mind? How would you know that it exists if it is not occurring in your mind? The thought that things occur outside of your mind, that's just a thought that's happening in your mind. And also learn about spirituality. Super important. I'm not talking about necessarily Christianity or old religions, but definitely check out Buddhism, definitely check out more new age types of spirituality like law of attraction, and definitely study this type of material like the Book of Not Knowing, or books that are what I would call comprehensive spirituality. So they take from all the different traditions and they put them all together. Those are very important to study. And then the last practice for being wise, which I believe is important, is to try psychedelics in a responsible way. So nothing is going to stretch your paradigm more, and nothing is going to unlock your mind more than having a solo mushrooms trip that's going to open you up to a lot of these new ideas. So I have videos about that, how to use psychedelics for personal development, and also how to get the most out of your psychedelic trips, where I talk about spiral dynamics, which is a super awesome video. So if you're interested in that, check out those videos. This was how to acquire wisdom. I hope you liked it. If you like this video, subscribe for more videos like this. Leave it a like and comment about what you liked, what you didn't like. If I had something in my teeth or not, you can comment, share your opinions. I love answering comments. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.